In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus tells the parable of the wise and the foolish builders. The foolish builder builds his house upon the sand, and the storm comes and washes his house away. His work does not last. The wise builder builds his house upon the rock. Storms come, waves blow, but the house endures. His work lasts. Now, typically, we apply this parable and say, what Jesus is saying is, build your life upon the rock, meaning upon him, because that'll see you through the storms of life. That'll make sure that you have a secure foundation. Awesome. Fantastic application. In fact, I think that's clearly Jesus' intended meaning. I have a different significance associated with that parable, and it concerns preaching. When I preach, I tend to spend about 1 hour of research and preparation for every 1 minute that I'm up there talking. 30-minute sermon, about 30 hours of work. The problem is that in 30 hours, you can come up with all this cool stuff and all these neat things that you want to say and all the ways that you want to, wow people and that your own learning is expanded. And you get up there and you can't say it all. You can't say 30 hours of material in 30 minutes. In fact, you can probably only say the most appropriate 45 minutes of preparation in that 30 minutes of time. And even then you feel like you're skipping and losing it. So consequently, you do all this work that does not last. It's like a house built on sand. It goes away. And the net result is melancholy and despair. You lose heart and you don't want to preach anymore because you're not sure anybody's any different and you have nothing to show for all your hard work. Well, I realized that if I would tweak my process just a little bit, instead of having research, what I could have is a manuscript, but not just a manuscript. I mean, a sermon manuscript, a lot of guys do that, a lot of people do that, and they end up with an 8 or 10 page essay that outlines verbatim what they're going to do. Bill Hybels does that, Tom Wright does that, of course, great preachers do that all the time. But I thought instead of a manuscript, what if I wrote a book? Now, typically I teach through series. Series go anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks long at our church, and people seem to respond really well to that. We have, as part of our sermon series, we always create questions for satellite groups, small groups, home churches, or other campuses, personal devotional guides so people can dig in. So there's all this ancillary material stuff. So I thought, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to spend, like hundreds of hours prepping a sermon series, why don't I adjust my schedule, prep that sermon series 6 or 8 months in advance, and instead of just doing the work, why don't I write a book? Now, it's not going to be a great book. I'm not Leo Biscaglia. I'm not Chuck Colson. I'm just me. But what if I wrote it all down? Well, here's what we did. We started what we called the Teaching Atlas Project. Those were teaching atlases, those little books with questions and study guides. We published, on average, 6 a year, and we have currently over 72 of them that we have published in our church. Now, we did a couple things like self-publish and made a couple available on Amazon or Kindle or whatever, but honestly, that part ended up being more than it was worth because the things that people wanted was the actual artifact. They wanted to hold something in their hands, even if they didn't read it, even if they didn't study it. They wanted to feel like they were a part of what they got. It was like a spiritual souvenir. And the biggest payoff, honestly, was that I no longer felt like I wanted to quit. Instead of having nothing to show for my work, now I had proof that I'd actually done something and that it mattered. And then this is cool. Rather than just, writing books, selling books, and collecting a little bit of money for the church or taking my cut or whatever, I thought, I'm going to do my part 100% for free, just on my employment with the church. And then I'm going to find somebody in the church who will underwrite the cost of these teaching atlases. Now, the way it works in self-publishing land, they're so cheap. For a 200-page book, you're looking at about $2 or $3 a copy. I mean, it's really, really affordable. So I would go out and find a sponsor who'd underwrite the cost of 500 copies of that or 1,000 copies of that or whatever. And then we'd tell people in our congregation, hey, every teaching atlas you buy, 100% of the proceeds go to a local charity. And that's what we did. Every atlas has a charity to which it is tethered. And so we are, as a church, constantly giving money and sowing money and blessing our community over and over and over again, that they are reaping the financial benefits of our devotion, further demonstrating that we as a church are on their side. And that's a weird preaching innovation that just came out of trying to not hate my job.